Hello on, this is Max from Media Search Program, and in this episode we're going to be talking about Ryzen's new CPU lineup, some benchmarks, some leaked sources, information, and of course to stay up with the latest information news, follow me on my social media which I'll have down below, subscribe and help me grow so I can deliver more information and help many other people out. Anyhow, let's start off with AMD Ryzen. So you'll have three different variants, SR7, SR5 and the SR3. Now SR stands for Summit Ridge, so it's Summit Ridge platform orientated. So the 7th series is pretty much the top end model. So you're looking at 8 cores, 16 threads, as you can see from the table here. The SR5, you're looking at 6 cores, 12 threads, as well as a medium low end of 4 cores, 8 threads, and finally the SR3 is going to be 4 cores and 4 threads. Now I like to point out the 1800X will, as I said, 8 cores, 16 threads. It will have an L3 cache of 16 megabytes, TDP of 95 watts, which is 45 watts lower than the Intel's current CPUs, which apparently the 6900K is at 140 watts as its counterpart, so definitely less wattage there. Base clock is at 3.6 gigahertz, turbo is at 4 gigahertz, XFR is at 4 gigahertz plus, and the price is at $500. So we've gone from a $1,000 i7 6900K to around about a $500 Ryzen 7 1800X. Very interesting. And as for XFR, I'll get to that in a moment. For now, I'll just keep moving on into motherboards and whatnot. So as I have said previously, with motherboards, it'll be AM4 platform, which means Summit Ridge ready. We'll have a few different chipsets that you can see from the image here. The Enthusiast will be an X370, mainstream B350, and the Essential will be an A320. And as you can see, that the Enthusiast X370 will support Crossfire, SLI, overclocking, USB 3.1 Generation 2, SATA, and whatnot. So you can see that from the graph here, which is very interesting. As for pricing, an Australian website called EWO has been able to show some pricing, and thanks to WCCF Tech responsible for finding, so credits to them. And as you can see that the Asus Prime X370 Pro AM4 retails for about $245.85 Australian. So that gives you an idea about prices, and I'll have a few images of the motherboards and how they look, which is very interesting. Now, as I said to you before about XFR, it pretty much means extended frequency range. So what does that mean? It means that if your system is very well cooled, even air cooled, which I'll show you a picture here of 3 different coolers that AMD is supplying, 65 watt, 95 watt, and the high performance coolers. I'll show you that here and now. They're saying that, end quote, "We wanted to reward those people who create better cooling solutions," said Lansing. "If you can keep the temperature under its limits, we allow for the frequency of the part to go over max frequency." So what I'm presuming from the XFR, what they're saying is that if you have very high good quality cooling, maybe water cooling, custom cooling or whatnot, they allow you to overclock it, or the CPU can automatically adjust itself for higher overclockable, as notes over here. So fully automated, no user intervention required. So that gives you a bit of an idea, which is very interesting. So it's an automatic overclocking that kicks if there's enough thermal headroom. EFR needs no user intervention and clicks in automatically while the processor remains cool. But if you like to do it manually, you may do so. Now, talking about some early benchmarks, besides the French site that claimed Ryzen at 5 GHz on air, which is very interesting, we have some other news over here. So, according to this site over here, I'll have the images on the screen for you to see. We have seen that early benchmarks have shown that they run a 1700X, which is in a Ryzen 7 lineup. It got a pass mark reference, which was running through the pass mark performance test 9.0. Although it did fail to register the turbo's clock speed. However, they were running at a base clock of 3.4 gigahertz without turbo functionality, and they couldn't even overclock it because it was apparently running on an A320 chip, as I showed you before, that cannot be overclocked. You would need a B350 or an X370 for overclocking procedures. Now, what they did say is that, and as you can see, I'll have it on a screen here, that the 1700X outperformed every other CPU 5 out of 8 tests, including the fastest 8-core chip of the i7 6900K. Now, in comparison to Intel's $1,000 8-core Extreme Edition Haswell 59 i7 5900X, Ryzen was 6 out of 8 tests faster. So for a chip that is way less money than the Intel, it looks extremely good. Now, further benchmarks were done, and I'll just be quicker on this one. The 6-core Ryzen 5 1600 X benchmarks seem to be 50% faster than the i5 7600K on single thread, and I quote, performance of Ryzen unit shows 1888 points, which is previously on par with the i7 6850K. Now, they didn't expect that to happen, but when they found out that they did the test, they found out that the single core test was very close 1-to-1. However, when they ran the multi-threaded test against the i7 6850K, they found out that the Ryzen scored 12,544 points, which is faster than the Core i7 6850K, which reaches 10,872 points. So there's the images for you, just to show you a little bit. So Ryzen looks very good, honestly. Now, as for its competitor, as I mentioned to you before here quickly, you can see from the table their competitor. So we know that the 1800X is Intel's competitor of the 6900K. 1700X from AMD is the i7 7700K, 6800K, and the 1600X is the i5 7600K. So it looks very interesting, and I'll show you a bit more of the actual single thread and multi-threaded, and I'll give you the sources as well. So my thoughts are pretty much that if you're going to be looking in the future to invest in some sort of AMD or Intel, unless Intel releases a newer tick of, say, Cannon Lake or whatnot, then you might as well stick with AMD, because AMD looks like to be very competitive and a very high quality contender to Intel. So I wonder what's going to happen next. As I said, stay tuned, and I hope they can provide you with that information. Thank you.